Working on? Chris, you don't work on anything. What's going on? Look, I got an offer to play overseas, okay? It's my chance, Sam. My big break. I stared at him, disbelief and anger bubbling inside me. Big break? Chris, you couldn't make the starting lineup in college. What makes you think you're good enough to go overseas? Chris waved me off, like my words didn't matter. You wouldn't understand. This is my dream. I can't let it pass me by. And what about Jamie? He's your son, Chris. Your responsibility. I'll send money. Mom and Dad can take care of him for now. Let me be. That was the last conversation I had with him before he disappeared. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. My parents were in the kitchen, arguing and rifling through papers.
Samuel, have you seen my jewelry box?
No, why?
It's gone, and so is the cash we kept in the drawer.
It didn't take long to put the pieces together. Chris had cleaned us out. He took my parents' emergency savings, my rent money, and anything else he could find of value. By the time we realized what had happened, he was already on a plane.
How could he do this to us?
My mom cried. My dad was holding back his tears. I didn't know what to do. Chris left us with nothing but heartbreak and a child who didn't understand why his father wasn't there. My parents and I took turns caring for Jamie. Growing up, my brother Chris was the golden boy. Or at least, that's what he wanted everyone to believe. He had big dreams, the kind that made our parents puff their chests with pride when he talked about them at family gatherings. I'm going to be the next big thing in basketball. He'd say things like that, gripping an imaginary ball and pretending to make a shot. Just wait. NBA, here I come. The truth? Chris was, well, let's just say basketball wasn't exactly his calling. Sure, he was tall, taller than most of the kids at school. But coordination? Non-existent. He couldn't dribble a ball without tripping over his own feet, and his jump shot looked more like a kid flinging a rock at a tree than anything remotely professional. Still, Chris had a confidence about him that somehow convinced everyone else to believe in him. Everyone except me. I watched him blow through life like a reckless storm, leaving chaos in his wake. Chris didn't just want to be famous, he wanted shortcuts to fame. He skipped practices, lied about injuries, and sweet-talked coaches into giving him chances he didn't deserve. By the time he got to college on a partial scholarship, something that baffled me to this day, his reputation as an up-and-coming star was built on more lies than talent. That's where it all really started to fall apart. In his freshman year, Chris met Megan. Megan was the kind of person who made you wonder what she saw in Chris. She was bright, kind-hearted, and practical in a way that Chris never was. She was everything he wasn't. Responsible, hardworking, and smart. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd be the one to set him straight. Maybe she'd force him to grow up. But Chris had a way of dragging people down to his level. By the time their relationship got serious, Chris had already flunked most of his classes. He spent more time partying than studying, convinced he didn't need a degree because scouts will find me any day now. When Megan got pregnant, I thought that would finally shake some sense into him. He'd have to take responsibility, wouldn't he? I was wrong. Chris dropped out of college before the end of his sophomore year. He blamed everyone but himself. His professors, the coaches, even Megan. They don't see my potential. They're holding me back. Meanwhile, Megan stayed behind, working 2 jobs and taking summer classes to catch up. She was determined to give their baby a better future, even if Chris wasn't interested. By the time their son Jamie was born, Megan was exhausted. She'd worked herself to the bone, hoping Chris would step up. Megan didn't survive childbirth. A complication during delivery took her life, leaving baby Jamie without a mother and Chris with a responsibility he clearly wasn't ready to handle. I remember standing outside the hospital room, holding a squirming Jamie in my arms while Chris paced the hallway, running his hands through his hair. I can't do this, Sam. I'm not ready to be a dad. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders, shake him, and scream at him to grow up, but I kept my voice steady. Well, you better get ready. This kid didn't ask for any of this, Chris. He's your son. Chris didn't answer. He just kept pacing, mumbling to himself about how unfair life was. For a few weeks, he pretended to care. He'd hold Jamie for 5 minutes, snap a picture for social media, and then hand him back to our mom or me. He talked a big game about stepping up, but every time Jamie cried or needed a diaper change, Chris conveniently disappeared. Then came the day everything unraveled. Chris had been acting strange for a week. He avoided eye contact, mumbled vague excuses when anyone asked him questions, and spent a lot of time on his phone. One night, while I was cleaning up after dinner, I overheard him talking in the next room. "Yeah, man, I'm in. I'll be there as soon as I can. Just make sure the contract's ready." I walked into the room and asked what contract he was talking about. Chris jumped, his phone slipping from his hand. He scrambled to pick it up, avoiding my gaze. "It's nothing, just something I've been working on." "Working on?" "Chris, you don't work on anything. What's going on?" "Look, I got an offer to play overseas, okay? It's my chance, Sam. My big break." I stared at him, disbelief and anger bubbling inside me. Big break? "Chris, you couldn't make the starting lineup in college. What makes you think you're good enough to go overseas?" Chris waved me off, like my words didn't matter. "You wouldn't understand. This is my dream. I can't let it pass me by." "And what about Jamie?" "He's your son, Chris. Your responsibility." "I'll send money. Mom and Dad can take care of him for now. Let me be." That was the last conversation I had with him before he disappeared. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. My parents were in the kitchen, arguing and rifling through papers.
Samuel, have you seen my jewelry box?
"No, why?"
It's gone. And so is the cash we kept in the drawer.
It didn't take long to put the pieces together. Chris had cleaned us out. He took my parents' emergency savings, my rent money, and anything else he could find of value. By the time we realized what had happened, he was already on a plane.
How could he do this to us?
My mom cried. My dad was holding back his tears. I didn't know what to do. Chris left us with nothing but heartbreak and a child who didn't understand why his father wasn't there. My parents and I took turns caring for Jamie, struggling to make ends meet while Chris chased his delusional dreams. Months later, I tracked down the so-called team he'd joined. It wasn't a professional league. It was a group of washed-up players doing exhibition games for scraps. Chris wasn't a star. He was a joke. And yet, he never came home. He never called. He never even sent a single dollar for his son. Jamie grew up without a father, and I grew up resenting the brother I'd once admired. Chris abandoned his family, chasing a dream that was never real. And in the process, he left behind the only thing that could have given his life true meaning. But maybe that was for the best, because Jamie deserved better than Chris ever could have been. It took time, but a year after Chris left, I managed to land a stable job. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough to help my parents and give Jamie a semblance of stability. Our lives slowly pieced themselves back together, and as the months turned to years, I found myself falling into the role Chris had abandoned. By the time Jamie turned 3, I officially adopted him. The process was long and draining, but there was no hesitation in my heart. He was my son now, in every way that mattered. He grew up knowing about Chris, but to Jamie, I was his father. The bond we formed was unshakable, and I couldn't have been prouder to watch him grow into a bright boy. Life moved on without Chris, and honestly, we were better for it. My job allowed me to buy a new house for my parents, Jamie and me. It wasn't a mansion, but it was ours, and it was very comfortable. For 12 years, Chris was nothing more than a distant memory, a shadow of the past we had long since left behind. And then, one day, the shadow came back. Chris returned looking nothing like the man who had strutted out of our lives with so much arrogance. He was thin, almost skeletal, with ragged clothes and sunken eyes. His hair was unkempt, and the stupid grin he used to wear was gone. Still, even in his tattered state, he clung to the pride that had always been his downfall. "Samuel, it's me." He'd thought I didn't recognize him, since I couldn't stop staring at him. "What do you want, Chris? You're clearly not needed in our lives anymore after what you did." "I'm not here to be in your lives. I just came to take back what's mine." It took me a second to realize he was talking about Jamie. "He's my son, Samuel. You've got no right to keep him from me." Before I could respond, Jamie walked out of the house. He was 15 now, tall and confident, with a sharp tongue he wasn't afraid to use. He looked Chris up and down, his expression filled with disgust. There was no doubt that he'd heard our conversation. "You think you can just show up after all these years and call yourself my father? I'm your dad, kid. Blood doesn't lie." "Blood? You mean the blood you left me and my mom to die for?" The blood that ran when you abandoned us for a career you were too talentless to handle? You're not my dad. You're just some loser who couldn't even make it in life. Samuel is my dad. He's the one who raised me, who stayed. You're nothing but garbage. The words hit Chris like a slap, but instead of admitting his failure, he held his pride. I can see they've managed to poison your heart. I'm still your father. You'll see. The law's on my side. He stormed off. It didn't take long for him to return with the police. He stood outside our house, pointing an accusing finger as the officers approached. He kidnapped my son. That's my child in there. I laughed at him before handing the officers every document proving my legal guardianship over Jamie. The adoption papers, court orders, everything. This idiot abandoned Jamie 15 years ago. He never called to speak to him, nor did he ever send money. For 15 years, I've taken care of Jamie. My dad's not lying. This man left me. I don't want him near us. Samuel is my father. He always will be. My parents also spoke, telling the cops how Chris had run away, leaving us all in debts. The officers turned to Chris. Mr. Chris, do you have any proof to support your claim? Chris stammered, his bravado crumbling under their scrutiny. I don't, but he's a thief. I just want my child. You're too broke to take care of yourself, not to talk of a child. One officer shook his head. Wasting our time with baseless accusations. You should be ashamed. They dismissed the case, praising me for stepping up as Jamie's father and warning Chris not to return. But Chris wasn't finished. That night, he tried sneaking into the house. Armed with a knife, he scaled the fence, clearly intent on something sinister. But luck wasn't on his side. He slipped on the wet metal, falling hard onto the concrete below. The loud crash woke the entire household. When we rushed outside, we found Chris writhing on the ground, his ankles twisted at unnatural angles.
Oh my God, Chris.
Her shock quickly turned to disappointment as she saw the way he was dressed and a knife and ropes lying beside him. It was so clear that he came to hurt us. We called the police again, and they arrived to arrest him for attempted burglary. This is serious. You're looking at jail time. Chris tried to protest, but there was no sympathy left for him. He was sentenced to 2 years in jail, with a fine he couldn't afford. His injuries from the fall were left untreated for too long, and by the time the prison doctors got to him, it was too late. His legs had to be amputated below the knees. When he finally got out, we were long gone. My job had taken us to a different country, far from the mess Chris had brought into our lives. He was left alone, crawling through the streets, begging for scraps. No one wanted to hire a crippled ex-convict, and the pride he had once clung to was nowhere to be found. He ended up washing people's cars for a few dollars, and sometimes mow people's lawns. He tried severally reaching us, but we all blocked his number. Chris had spent his life chasing a dream that never existed, and in the end, he was left with nothing. Nothing but regret, and the cold, hard truth that he'd thrown away everything that could have mattered. While in school, Jamie was so talented at soccer that a famous team signed him. A few years later, he became a superstar, earning thousands of dollars a week. He ended up buying everyone a house, and we became incredibly rich. Despite his busy schedule, traveling the world and playing for his team, he always made time to call me and his grandparents. We later heard that when Chris found out about his son and watched him play, he collapsed and went into a coma for several days. Fortunately, he didn't die. Perhaps God kept him alive to languish in regret for abandoning his son. Jamie never sent Chris a dime, nor did he ever respond to the letters and emails Chris sent him. Thanks for watching. What? Is that a child or monster? Why does he look so ugly?
I was hurt hearing him say that to my child. My husband was also hurt, but his mother and sister signaled us to be calm.
Down syndrome. But you have no right to say that about my son, Dad. You're being insensitive. But the child is ugly. He looks so hideous. You gave birth to a monster. Why didn't you let him die? He's going to be a liability. A monstrous liability.
I'd had enough of his insensitivity. I stood up and stormed out of the living room with my son. Hi there. My name's Sandra. 3 years ago, my husband and I got married. My husband, Jace, is a good man. I met him when I was working as a receptionist at a hotel. He used to visit there with his business associates. Being the friendly people that we are, it didn't take long before we became friends. On my free days, we would visit restaurants together. We both loved to find and explore new places. I was comfortable and happy with our friendship. A couple of months later, we started going out. We developed feelings for each other after being so close. Jace never failed to make me happy during our dating period. He helped me get a better job with a better pay. Everything was going smoothly. Surprisingly, barely 3 months after we began dating, Jace proposed marriage to me. I couldn't believe it. I cried so much out of happiness. After our engagement, he took me to see his family. According to him, his dad had abandoned them when he was only a child, so he barely knew him. Of course, I didn't mind. When we reached his family's house, I was received lovingly. He had one sibling who I absolutely adore. She and his mother made me feel so loved and accepted. I couldn't be happier with how things were going. We soon got married. Our marriage was a low-key one since we both wanted it that way. I was an orphan, so I didn't have many people in attendance, aside from my friends at work and a few extended families. Nevertheless, I enjoyed my wedding. After the wedding ceremony, Jace and I began our married life in the mansion he bought. Jace had a great job, so money was never a problem for us. I got a call one day, about 4 months after our wedding. It was an unsaved number, so I was skeptical about picking it up. However, I was forced to, when the number continuously kept calling me.
Hello. Am I speaking to Sandra?
Yes. Who are you? I was shocked when the caller revealed himself as Jace's father. Even more, he was crying. He asked to meet me up at a restaurant close to our house and said he had a lot of things to tell me and also needed my help. I didn't know whether to believe the stranger. I would have spoken to Jace about it, but the man had begged me not to. The next day, after leaving my workplace, I headed to the restaurant to meet the man. Once I saw him, I immediately knew he was truly Jace's father. They looked so much alike. I greeted him and sat down. We began talking, and he explained that he was sorry about leaving his family.
I regret my decision, child. I wish I could turn back the hands of time. My wife refuses to see me, and I know the kids hate me too. Please help me.
I didn't know what to do. I couldn't tell if it would be a good idea to help him. However, when the man began crying, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. I agreed to help him. The plan was to find a way to gather my husband and his family at their family house, then bring his father to them. I knew Jace would be mad at me for keeping him in the dark, but the man was my father-in-law. Also, I thought it was good since he'd accepted his mistake and was willing to correct it. 2 weeks later, I was finally able to gather us all at Jace's family house. After dinner, I announced that I'd brought someone with me. That was after Jace's father texted to inform me that he was outside the house. I immediately replied and asked him to come in and show himself to the curious people. Once he entered, the whole place fell into silence. Jace's mother, a few seconds later, yelled at him to get out of her house, but the man quickly went on his knees. I did the same and begged for him.
How dare you go to my wife? After all you did, I can't believe you had the boldness to show yourself to us.
His father continued begging and crying. I explained everything the man told me, and it seemed to calm down. Once everyone was calm, Jace's mother asked her husband to leave, as she had to think. The man didn't argue. He stood up and left. Jace's mother broke in a loud sob as her kids went to console her. I also did the same. Afterward, we had a talk. I was able to convince her to forgive her husband as the man seemed truly sorry. I pleaded with my husband and his sister too. Eventually, they agreed to meet him again. I was so happy to have made their family complete again. The next time he saw them, he apologized over and over again. The family hugged each other happily. They decided to start afresh and let the past be buried. I did ask him how he got to know me, and I discovered that he'd been watching the family for long, but was too afraid to approach them. Seeing the love they had for me encouraged him to approach me. 3 months after the reunion, I got pregnant with our first child. Jace was elated. He couldn't stop thanking me and smiling. Family and friends also congratulated us after we shared the news with them. We were all happy. I had to stop my job because my husband didn't want his pregnant wife going through even the slightest stress. I wasn't alone. Whenever Jace was away, his sister would spend time with me. And when his sister wasn't available, his mother was there. We were all happy. Well, that happiness didn't last long. My baby was born with Down syndrome. Strangely, the doctors hadn't noticed at birth and even after birth. When I started to sense his weird behaviors and features around the time he was 4 months old, I took him to the doctor and he was diagnosed. It didn't make me love my son any less, nor did his father. We loved our son and were ready to give him whatever care he needed. It would have been good if my father-in-law was the same. He didn't see or know about my son's condition until the family visited us when my son was 6 months old.
What? Is that a child or monster? Why does he look so ugly?
I was hurt hearing him say that to my child. My husband was also hurt, but his mother and sister signaled us to be calm.
You shouldn't say that about a child. He probably has Down syndrome, according to what I see. You shouldn't speak that way, no matter what.
Down syndrome. But you have no right to say that about my son, Dad. You're being insensitive. But the child is ugly. He looks so hideous. You gave birth to a monster. Why didn't you let him die? He's going to be a liability. A monstrous liability.
I'd had enough of his insensitivity. I stood up and stormed out of the living room with my son. I did hear their loud voices from my room, and I knew they were arguing. Before they left, my mother-in-law and her daughter came into my room and apologized for my father-in-law's behavior. It was so sad that a day I'd planned to be filled with happiness turned out worst. We continued taking care of our son. I refused to allow my father-in-law anywhere close to him. I met up with my mother-in-law and her daughter a few times, but never him. The women loved my son so much, regardless of his issue, and that was all that mattered. On my son's first birthday, we threw a party. It wasn't so big, but big enough to accommodate our families and friends. When the day finally came, my father-in-law ruined it. I was skeptical about inviting him, but I didn't want to be disrespectful by inviting his wife and daughter and not him. Things were going smoothly at the party until my father-in-law requested to give a speech. I smiled, thinking he was going to give an apology speech publicly, but I was wrong. My father-in-law took the mic and began to mock my child. He called him a monster, a sick child, among other vile titles. I burst into tears on my seat. Worst of all, he was laughing while doing that.
If he had Down syndrome and was good-looking, he could have been manageable. But he's as ugly as his mother. I'm sure she agreed to marry my son because she couldn't afford to marry a person as ugly as her.
I was shocked. I had zero idea what suddenly got into him. I couldn't place my hands on a reason he would be doing that to my son and I. Everyone was probably as shocked as me because they remained rooted to their seats with straight faces. Once he was done, he got off the stage with a proud smile and went to his seat. I was about to stand up and leave with my son when my sister-in-law stood up and began walking to the stage. I wondered what she was going to say.
Firstly, you're nothing but an ungrateful, insensitive, bloody fool. You abandoned us for over 15 years. We've hated you all our lives. If it weren't for Sandra, you wouldn't have been with us. Who the hell do you think you are to talk about her son like that? My first nephew?
My tears flowed more as my sister-in-law poured insults on him. Once she was done, a friend of Jace got on the stage.
You're a complete disgrace to all fathers out there. You don't deserve to be called a father.
More people came up on stage and gave him a piece of their minds. I could see the look of guilt in his eyes, seeing that no one accepted him. He tried to approach me with pleading eyes, but my husband stopped him.
I will never let you near them. I should have never allowed you back into our lives.
You've always been an idiot. She made us forgive, and I tried to believe you've changed, but you're still just the stupid man I knew.
I consider myself fatherless from now on. You're evil.
We even accommodate your broke self. Now go back to the house, pack your things, and get out of our lives. If you ever try to come back, I'll report you to the police.
Please, please forgive me. I'll stop it. I'll change, please.
He begged desperately, but his family weren't hearing any of it. Some of our friends grabbed him and threw him out of the party. When we got home and met him there, Jace beat him up so badly that the man escaped by running away without his luggage. It was quite a funny scene. I thanked the family for standing up for my son and I.
You've become my child, and that's my grandson. I won't allow anyone make you both uncomfortable.
You've been good to us, and Down syndrome doesn't make my nephew a monster. We all love him, and we'll protect him.
I don't regret beating him up. He deserves it for messing with my wife and son.
I felt happy and grateful. And as for my father-in-law, he tried to come back for his things, but his daughter gave him another round of beating. That was enough to send him out of our lives forever. Since then, we haven't heard from him. We heard he later got married to a wife who constantly beats him, and unfortunately for them, they had a child with Down syndrome, and Jay's father is depressed. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
When I turned 17, everything changed. My father came home one night, drunk and furious. He had lost a valuable client and was looking for someone to take his anger out on. Gene was his target. "Where's that useless boy?" "Dad, calm down. Gene didn't do anything. Stay out of this, Corey." He stormed into Gene's room and started punching him. I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped in, putting myself between Gene and our father. "If you want to hit someone, hit me." He punched me, but I was so angry that I shrugged it off and punched him back, knocking him out cold. Gene and I didn't waste any time. We grabbed whatever we could carry, took some money from our father's wallet, and left the house. Growing up in our house was like living in a horror film. My name is Corey, and I have a younger brother, Gene, who's 6 years younger than me. Our parents were the kind of wealthy people who believed that money made them superior to everyone else. But their wealth didn't translate into kindness or love. Instead, they were selfish, cruel, and abusive, both verbally and physically. I remember one time when I was about 10, I had spilled a glass of juice on the dining table. My mother's reaction was swift and brutal.
Corey, you idiot, look what you've done. Do you know how expensive this table is?
"I'm sorry, Mom. It was an accident."
An accident? You're nothing but a burden. Go to your room and stay there until I say otherwise.
I spent the entire day locked in my room without food. This was just one of many punishments that Gene and I endured. My father wasn't any better. He was often away on business, but when he was home, his temper was explosive. One evening, when Gene was about 7, he accidentally broke one of our father's prized vases. Our father's rage was terrifying. "Gene, you little brat, what is wrong with you? I cared more about that vase than I do about you."
I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to. It was an accident.
"Sorry isn't enough. I'll make sure you never repeat that mistake again." He grabbed Gene by the arm and dragged him upstairs, throwing him into his room. I could hear Gene crying, and it broke my heart. I wanted nothing more than to run away, to start a life far from our parents. But I couldn't leave Gene behind. I had to protect him as much as I could. Our parents were wealthy but refused to pay for any assistance. For example, when the washing machines were broken, my brother and I were tasked with doing their laundry by hand instead of them replacing the machines. They claimed they didn't want to waste money because they were saving to buy a new house. We also cooked and mowed the lawn most of the time since our parents refused to hire a maid. My mom would often say,
What's the point of having kids if they can't help us?
"You would think that, because my parents were rich, we lived a comfortable life." But no, they were so cheap at times that it baffled me if we were even wealthy. When we ran out of toilet paper, my dad would say we could use water to clean ourselves instead, as they were saving for a bigger and nicer house. They wouldn't even give us money for transportation to school. We often walked to and from school because they refused to pay for the bus or provide us with fare. When I turned 17, everything changed. My father came home one night, drunk and furious. He had lost a valuable client and was looking for someone to take his anger out on. Gene was his target. "Where's that useless boy?" "Dad, calm down. Gene didn't do anything. Stay out of this, Corey." He stormed into Gene's room and started punching him. I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped in, putting myself between Gene and our father. "If you want to hit someone, hit me." He punched me, but I was so angry that I shrugged it off and punched him back, knocking him out cold. Gene and I didn't waste any time. We grabbed whatever we could carry, took some money from our father's wallet, and left the house. We found a cheap hotel room for the night, where we planned our next move. We knew we couldn't stay in the city. We decided to hitchhike across the country, aiming for the opposite coast. It was a tough journey, but we were determined to escape. During our hitchhiking journey across the country, we encountered many people. Some kind, others indifferent. One kind couple gave us a ride for nearly 100 miles and even bought us dinner. Their kindness reminded us that not everyone in the world was as cruel as our parents. When we finally reached the coast, we were exhausted but hopeful. The beaches became our refuge. During the day, we scoured the area for work, and at night, we would huddle together under a makeshift shelter, dreaming of a better future. The sea air, though harsh, felt like freedom. Our first jobs were humble: cleaning tables, washing dishes, and helping out at local shops. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get by. We saved every penny we could, determined to build a new life. After months of living on the beach and using rest areas to clean up, we managed to get part-time jobs. Slowly, we saved enough money to rent a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was ours. We enrolled in school, determined to get an education and build a better future. Years passed, and we worked hard, taking on odd jobs and studying late into the night. Eventually, we earned degrees and secured better jobs. Life was finally looking up. Being the older brother, there were times when I acted like a parent, and there were others when we were just the best of friends. It was never easy, but we made it work. Jean, we're going to make it. We just have to keep pushing.
I believe you, Corey. We've come this far. There's no turning back now. Besides, if we stick together, we won't have to go back and deal with those two monsters ever again. They can't hurt us anymore.
But the past has a way of finding you, and one day, out of the blue, a private investigator contacted us. He had been hired by our parents, who had been searching for us for years. As it turned out, our father was gravely ill and was suffering from a rare disease. He needed a kidney transplant, and we were his last hope. I've been looking for you two for years. Your parents are desperate to find you, and your father's condition is worsening. The two of you are their last hope. Oh yay? What makes them think that we'll come crawling back to them after all these years? Well, they are offering several thousands of dollars if you will return with me. Jean, what do you think?
I don't know, Corey. They've never cared about us before, so it only makes sense that they contact us once they need something from us. I have no doubt in my mind that the money offer is real at the very least.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, we'll return with you. Despite our skepticism, we agreed to return and see if there was a chance that they didn't only just want us for a selfish reason. The reunion was tense. Our parents were ecstatic to see us, but their motives were clear. They needed us to save our father's life.
We've been looking for you for so long. We're so happy you're here.
Really? You're happy to see us?
Well, of course, your father needs a kidney. You are here to help him after all, right?
Yeah. I guess we'll help. And of course we need to see this money that you promised us, but that isn't enough. We also have some conditions that we need you to agree to, or else we are just walking away. We know that when we ran away, you took us out of your wills. If you want a kidney, we want to be reinstated into the will, with a clause that guarantees us a large sum of money if anything happens to either of you. And I'll be having my lawyer review it, so don't try any funny business with it. Fine. Are you serious? Fine. Just save my life. I didn't trust them, so I had my lawyer review the new will. Once everything was confirmed, I agreed to the surgery. But I had a plan. It wasn't easy to arrange, but I hired someone to ensure that the kidney would be rejected. Honestly, it was a bit scary how easy it was to find a hitman, and it didn't even cost that much for his services. During the surgery, the hitman, who was dressed as a nurse, injected a combination of viruses and bacteria into the kidney as it was being delivered to my father. A few days later, my father's body rejected it, and his condition worsened. Desperate, he demanded a kidney from Jean, but before anything could be arranged, he passed away. The last few hours of his life were filled with pain, and I would be lying if knowing that didn't make me a little happy. And we were part of his will and fortune. Our mother was devastated. She fell apart emotionally, leaving us as the de facto powers of attorney. She was so distraught that she was nearly catatonic and needed assistance to function. Seeing this, we took advantage of the situation and we placed her in an old folks' home and took control of the family estate. Years passed, and our mother snapped out of her grief-stricken state and eventually realized what had happened. She tried to change the will, but we convinced her doctors and lawyers that she was mentally unfit. And since she was deemed not to be sound of mind, she couldn't check herself out of the old folks' home. nor could she change her will. When she passed away, we inherited everything. Jean and I finally felt free. We celebrated the end of our parents' reign of terror and used our inheritance to start a business together. It wasn't easy, but we thrived, finding happiness and success. We had survived and built a life despite our terrible upbringing, and for that, we were proud. Looking back, those years after our escape were some of the hardest, yet most formative of our lives. The initial days were filled with uncertainty and fear. We often questioned if leaving was the right decision, but the answer was always yes. We had no other choice but to survive. Thanks for watching.
I was among the first cops to be at the crime scene, and I arrested the gang, and I was the head detective in the case.
Please, help us. We heard you were at the robbery scene. Tell them he was forced, please. Think of something. Cops are liars. Help us, Vanessa, please.
The memories of all the sufferings I endured, his betrayal to my mom, and how he hurt us both, flowed in. I held back tears and promised to help them. They left happily after thanking me. However, I had no plans to. I only raised their hopes to make them feel as hurt as my mom and I felt. On the day of the trial, I saw their hopeful gaze when I walked to the judge. Here are the evidence for the culprit. We also discovered him to be the ringleader in the robbery. There's also evidence and witnesses to confirm that he's committed other crimes, which includes kidnapping, sexual assault, physical abuse, and murder. Hi there. My name's Vanessa Hugh, and I'm currently 26 years old. I serve in the police as a detective. About 6 years ago, I was kicked out of my father's house by him and his new family. My parents were my idols. They both attended the same high school but were enemies then. My mom was the prettiest girl in the class, and my dad was the most handsome. Now, you must be wondering why they weren't close. I did too. Well, they were also the most intelligent and obsessed with topping the class. They hated each other because they were both making it hard for themselves. They didn't have a proper conversation even after graduation. However, as fate would have it, they met again after college. Then, my dad had just started his company, and my mom was a marketer. She was in search of a job and happened to hear about my dad's company. According to them, they were both embarrassed when they met each other and burst into laughter. Knowing how intelligent my mom was, my dad employed her. They both slowly became closer until they finally caught feelings for each other, and their life story began from there. They were quite intentional, honestly. Once my dad's company began flourishing properly, he proposed to her. They got married 3 months later. I was told that it took them quite a long time before they had me. My mom had countless miscarriages before I finally came, and that was 5 years after their wedding. One day, when I was 13, my dad asked to take me with him on a business trip. My mom happily agreed. To her, he was going to start putting me through the family business. But the reverse was the case. I was taken to a beautiful mansion in a different country, and was met by a strange woman and a young boy. I asked my father who the strangers were. I'd expected to see men in suits discussing business, not a woman who hugged my dad the same way my mom did.
This is Veronica. I want you to see her like a second mother. And this is her son, Vincent. See him like your elder brother.
I'd have thought the woman was his sister and the boy her son, but he added that I should never mention it to my mom. Throughout the 3 days I was there, the woman was all over my dad like he's her husband. I was confused. Even her son called him dad. At the time, I could tell he was 18 or more than. When the third day finally came, I was so relieved that I'll be going back home. I had gone into my room to take a novel I forgot. When I walked back to the living room, I saw my dad kissing the woman. Before they could notice me, I went back into the room and only left much later. I was heartbroken and confused. When we returned home, my mom happily hugged him and kissed him on the same lips he kissed the other woman with. I was so angry that I left for my room and asked no one to disturb me, using a headache as cover-up. Later that day, my mom came in. I hugged her and burst into tears. She was worried, but she didn't say a word until I stopped crying. Dad's cheating on you, Mom. He didn't take me on a business trip. We went to a woman's house and she has a son. He kissed her on the lips before we left, Mom. My mom smiled, but I could see the sadness in her eyes.
I'm aware, baby. I don't want you to hate him, okay? He loves you. And us. Having a second woman and son doesn't mean he loves us any less.
I couldn't believe her. She sounded like she knew about it a long time ago. I tried to talk to her, but she hushed me and gently warned me against discussing it any further. I accepted, but my dislike for my father began growing from then. Life continued like nothing happened, but I never forgot about it. Years later, when I was 18, my mom suddenly collapsed while we were having breakfast. She was quickly rushed to the hospital where she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. We were devastated, mostly me. However, my mom managed to keep a smile on.
I won't die, sweetie. I'm gonna fight it, okay? Stop crying now, baby.
How can you fight terminal cancer, honey? You're going to die. Don't lie to the girl.
I was horrified. How could he say that? Was he so stupid? It seemed as though my mom knew I was close to exploding, so she gave my hand a gentle squeeze before facing my dad.
You shouldn't be so negative, darling. Nessa's here. We should comfort her and not say things that would scare her.
Her voice sounded so weak. I felt pity for my mom, seeing her in such a poor condition. She stayed in the hospital longer than I thought, and I was filled with worry each day. I couldn't go home daily, and I only managed to attend classes regularly. One day, I returned home to meet the woman and her son from years ago, sitting in the living room. I was filled with rage. "What are you both doing here?" The woman eyed me without responding. Her son, who'd already become a grown man, responded instead.
We have come to take over what rightfully belonged to us.
It was then that it was confirmed that he's my stepbrother, born by the woman who my dad had an affair with before my mom gave birth to me. Tears filled my eyes. Before I could respond, my dad walked in with a smirk that showed he's been listening to us.
You heard them. They're my first family, and as you might have known already, I value them more than you and your sick mother. I have always wanted just a boy. I'm getting a divorce from her, as I'd like to focus on only my real family. I'll be requesting a DNA test. Hopefully you're not my child. I'll need to have both of you get rid of.
I couldn't believe my ears. It felt like I'd die that moment. The betrayal, the hurt, all mixed together. I wondered how my mom would feel if she heard about his plan to divorce her for his mistress and son. It was so overwhelming. I nearly fainted. I grabbed my bag and hurried to the hospital. I wanted to tell my mom and prepare her, but she was asleep, and I couldn't wake her up. I sat by her bedside, determined to wait until she woke up. While waiting, I slept off. It was about an hour later before I finally woke up to the sound of people coming in. My heart missed a beat as my dad and his new family walked in. My mom's smile never left her face. He flung the document to her and ordered her to sign it. Tears rolled down my eyes as she did, with her smile still on. She passed it to him afterward. Then, he told her about the DNA test. Only then did she speak.
Nessa is your child, and you know that. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sure you'll be disappointed.
Her smile never left her face. She turned to me, and I saw the tears in her eyes. I quickly held her hands, crying too.
I love you, honey. I want you to grow up and make me proud, whether I'm alive or not. I want you to have a good life, okay?
I nodded, sobbing loudly. I was scared. Her words were making me scared. She faced my dad and his new family next.
You should have cheated with someone else. She was the same person who nearly poisoned me at prom and who sent assassins to me after our wedding. It shouldn't have been her, but I forgive you. I love you. I always have and always will.
As her tears dropped, she gave up the ghost. I screamed in terror. My dad and the others left me alone with her. I was crying so loudly, begging her to come back, but she never did.
She is dead. We can now go.
I was shocked by what my stepbrother said after that. My dad managed to give her a shitty funeral, which made me hate him even more. He also had the DNA test done, and it came out positive. Life began with me living with them. I was severely maltreated. For 3 years, I lived like a slave. I was made to cook, clean, and even mow the lawn always. One morning, my dad walked into my room.
Pack your things and leave my house. My wife told me you started stealing, and you stole her necklace. I didn't raise a thief. Just pack your things and disappear before I return this evening. I don't want to see you when I get back.
Eventually, after getting satisfied with seeing me suffer, I was thrown out of the house and disowned by my father, simply because my stepmom claimed I stole her necklace and my father believed her. I didn't let that bring me down. I slept in the streets without shame, searching for jobs anywhere. I worked 3 part-time jobs and managed to save to get a house. I changed my name and started my life at Fresh. I went to a police academy after college, and last year, I started working as a cop. Due to my smartness and diligence, I quickly got promoted to the post of a detective. A few months later, my dad and his mistress were in front of me, her on her knees and my dad in heavy tears begging for my help. Apparently, their son had been so spoiled that he turned to crime. He had put them in so much trouble. Not only did he gamble with his parents' home, rendering them homeless, he also stole the company's money and also got involved in a serious robbery case that landed him in the station where I work. The investors at my dad's company are on his neck, as well as his workers. 60% already quit, and the rest were threatening to sue him if he didn't pay up. Their main problem, however, was to ensure their son didn't go to jail. I was among the first cops to be at the crime scene, and I arrested the gang, and I was the head detective in the case.
Please, help us. We heard you were at the robbery scene. Tell them he was forced, please. Think of something. Cops are liars. Help us, Vanessa, please.
The memories of all the sufferings I endured, his betrayal to my mom, and how he hurt us both, flowed in. I held back tears and promised to help them. They left happily after thanking me. However, I had no plans to. I only raised their hopes to make them feel as hurt as my mom and I felt. On the day of the trial, I saw their hopeful gaze when I walked to the judge. Here are the evidence for the culprit. We also discovered him to be the ringleader in the robbery. There's also evidence and witnesses to confirm that he's committed other crimes, which includes kidnapping, sexual assault, physical abuse, and murder. I saw their shocked faces when I said that. I presented the video I'd recorded when I caught him among the robbers. I also presented document of his other crimes. The judge allowed the witnesses to come in, and they testified to his crimes. I'd done so much investigation with the help of my colleagues, and I couldn't be more grateful to them. My stepbrother had hurt and killed a lot of people and committed so many other crimes. Because of that, the judge sentenced him to death by hanging, while the other members were sent to serve 20 years each. My stepmother immediately collapsed after the verdict. My dad stared at me, and I could see the pure pain in his eyes. His tears made me even happier. While their son got taken away, my dad's mistress was taken to the hospital where they discovered she'd gotten a full-body paralysis. On the day their son was to be hanged, I was allowed to follow. I took a video of the whole process and sent it to my dad afterward. The next day, I heard he'd a painful seizure. I felt relieved afterward. I'd taken my revenge on them all, and I was sure my mom would be happy too. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.
By the time I was 8, my parents decided to sell me off. They couldn't stand me anymore and couldn't afford my glasses. They hated me because I was an albino. I can't take care of you anymore. I'm going to find someone who wants you. But I doubt anyone in their sane minds would want a disabled child.
I feel like a failure for having you. I would have been fine with just your brother. If you dare go blind before we find a buyer for you, I'll kill you with my own hands.
Those words hurt like hell. Even though they'd been repeatedly calling me a disabled, it hurt every time. I believed I was. I mean, I didn't attend school, and I wasn't allowed to have friends. I was born with albinism and lazy eyes, and my parents absolutely hated it. My name is James, and I had a twin, Gabby. My parents weren't rich, neither were they poor. I would say we lived as average people. Before my twin and I were born, my parents had just gotten new jobs. They were newlyweds and surely weren't ready for kids. Well, my mom got pregnant and didn't have the courage to abort it, so they decided to have us. My mom was forced to quit her job during the 4th month of being pregnant. The doctor had advised her against doing anything stressful. It was also getting hard to do things at the factory where she worked, so quitting was a good idea. Everything fell on my dad. His job paid quite well, and that helped. My mom didn't want to sit idly at home, so she began a business online where she helped people advertise their products. It wasn't so profitable, but it helped a little. We stayed longer than normal in her womb. We came out when she was 10 months pregnant. I came out as an albino with lazy eyes, which scared my parents. What's wrong with him? I don't want a disabled child. Albinism isn't a disability, sir. The lazy eyes is just a feature that sometimes comes with albinism. He's a healthy and normal child.
You're just saying that to comfort us, Doctor. He's disabled. Gosh, I can't believe our misfortune.
The favoritism began from then. My brother had the best glassy skin and normal eyes. His hair was full too, unlike mine. Of course, my parents loved him. My parents refused to take me out with them. They were ashamed of me. Whenever they needed to leave home, they would go individually, so one person had to stay with me. It only made them angrier. When my mom eventually got a job, they began to leave me at home with my grandmother. But my grandmother was just like them. If she needed to go somewhere, she would take Gabby with her and leave me at home. On our 4th birthday, my parents made me wear clothes that covered nearly all of my skin, leaving only my head uncovered. They covered my hair with a huge cap and often covered my eyes when they were talking to people. On the 5th birthday, they found the perfect way to cover me up, which was by dressing me up as Spider-Man. On our 6th birthday, my parents locked me in a room and lied to everyone that I had chickenpox. Only my brother celebrated with friends they invited. That was the last time we celebrated a birthday because my parents ran out of lies. My eyes got worse by the time I was 7, and I needed glasses. My brother went to a normal school, but I was left to stay at home. When my brother returned from school, he would teach me what he was taught. But Gabby wasn't so brilliant, so I was often confused about the things he taught me. My dad soon got fired from work when he got caught stealing with a group of other employees. He had to pay a fine with all of his and my mother's savings to avoid being jailed. We had to rely on my mom's meager salary. It went like that for 2 whole months before my mom lost her cool. She was tired of feeding us alone. They began to argue a lot and often transferred their anger to me. My dad would slap me and call me bad luck. As for my mom, she developed the habit of spitting on me whenever she was angry. It was so disgusting because I hated dirt. She knew that. So whenever she spat on me, she would make me sit without washing until her anger melted off. By the time I was 8, my parents decided to sell me off. They couldn't stand me anymore and couldn't afford my glasses. They hated me because I was an albino. I can't take care of you anymore. I'm going to find someone who wants you. But I doubt anyone in their sane minds would want a disabled child.
I feel like a failure for having you. I would have been fine with just your brother. If you dare go blind before we find a buyer for you, I'll kill you with my own hands.
Those words hurt like hell. Even though they'd been repeatedly calling me a disabled, it hurt every time. I believed I was. I mean, I didn't attend school, and I wasn't allowed to have friends. Luckily for me, my parents found a couple who were desperate for a child. They took me with them to the agency, and the couple immediately showed their likeness for me. It was strange, because I'd never received love. Well, my parents sold off their rights over me and left without even glancing at me. I felt bad for the couple. Why did you buy me, sir and ma? I'm a disabled child, and all I'm going to do is give you problems. My parents always say I brought them bad luck and misfortune. I don't want to give you bad luck. I saw their eyes water, and I broke out in a sob. I felt like I'd made them sad with my misfortune. Surprisingly, they pulled me toward themselves and engulfed me in a hug. It was the first time I'd received a hug, and I was insanely shocked at the sudden love. Their warmth calmed me down. We're going to love you, son. Those people do not deserve you. We're your new parents, and we will shower you with all of the love we have.
You're not disabled. Albinism is beauty, not a disability. You're a handsome child. Don't ever forget that. Always tell yourself that you're not disabled, okay?
I instantly felt comfortable with them. My new parents kept to their promise. I was showered with so much love that I often burst into tears at how loved I was. They were wealthy and gladly showed me off to everyone. Their families loved me too. They all treated me like a precious egg. They got my eyes treated so that I wouldn't need glasses. They bought me the best clothes. I attended a great school where I finally made friends who strangely loved my look. Slowly, I began to accept that I wasn't bad luck, I wasn't ugly, and my albinism and lazy eyes weren't disabilities. I repaid my new parents by studying hard at school and never failing to top my class. I also behaved properly to everyone, which only brought me more love. My parents were always so proud of me. By the time I entered college, I already understood the family business and even helped to solve a situation once. My dad was so impressed and got me my first car as a reward. I completely forgot about my biological parents because I was so happy with the people they sold me off to. I worked even harder and emerged as the best graduating student. It was all over the news, as my dad was a popular businessman and my school was also well known. The day after my graduation, I got so many gifts and congratulations from people, including those who I had no idea of who they were. 1 month later, I resumed work at my dad's company as the vice president. I was already good at the business and ready to be the president, but my dad wasn't ready to step down yet. According to him, he wasn't ready to start sitting idly at home. Once I began working at the company, things changed even better. Our stocks went higher as a result of the new techniques I brought in, making my dad even more impressed. I began attending meetings with him as his successor. My face was always in the media with every milestone our company reached. I'd long gotten rid of my insecurity as an albino, so when I saw a few people on the internet talking about it, I ignored them. 90% loved me and didn't care about it, and that was all that mattered to me. Things went smoothly for the first year, and our company became the second richest in the business industry. I'd also risen to the top 5 richest youngest businessmen, occupying the 3rd spot. I was only 24. My dad boasted about me everywhere, and my mom had to deal with rejecting proposals of the countless rich women who wanted to get married to me. I wasn't ready for marriage yet. At least, not until I was 27. I was in the middle of a meeting one day when I was told that I had visitors who were begging to see me. It wasn't the first time that had happened. Oftentimes, people would come to ask for jobs or beg for me, and if they were qualified, I would find a place to put them in. Those who weren't, I'd simply give them money. I asked the security to bring them to my office and entertain them until I was done with the meeting. It wasn't until the next 30 minutes before it finally ended, and I went to my office. Once I walked in and saw the visitors, I recognized them. They were my biological parents and Gabby. I acted neutral and took my seat opposite them. All 3 of them instantly went on their knees.
Forgive us, James. We regret what we did to you, son. We're suffering a lot. It's so hard for us to feed. Your brother hasn't been able to get a job since he finished high school. Help us, please.
I need to undergo surgery too, James. I have cancer. I'm going to die if it's not treated sooner.
We were so happy to see you in the news. We knew our problems would be sorted once we saw you. I nearly burst into laughter, but I held it in. I'm sorry, but I have no idea of who you 3 are. You see, I lost all of my childhood memories. But you seem like you need help, so I'll help you. Please don't return here after I do.
We won't. We won't ever show our faces to you again. Just give us money, okay? I knew you would help us.
Even though I'd lied about losing my memories, seeing how they didn't care about it after I told them made me feel sad. It meant that they still didn't give a damn about me. I asked my bodyguard to bring me 3 bags of money from a special room. I saw how my biological family beamed with joy when I said that, but I kept a straight face. When the bags of money were given to them, I issued a stern warning. I don't like to see people I helped twice. If you ever show your faces to me again, I'm going to call the cops on you.
You don't have to worry about that. This money matters to us more. You'll never see us again.
I'm going to invest wisely and be as rich as you. Then we can compete as rivals. Thank you so much. Rivals? I nearly laughed. I watched as they left my office. From my window, I saw them dancing once they got out of the gates. Their happiness was surely going to be switched to sadness soon. Oh, the money? They were all fake. You see, sometimes people try to make deals with us using fake money, but we always catch them and hand them over to the cops. As for the money, they were always kept in bags in a special room. I didn't want to punish my family directly. They'll receive their punishments when they get to the bank and get caught trying to deposit fake money. 2 days later, I was watching the news when I saw my biological parents and brother in police custody. Apparently, the bank had arrested them when they went to deposit the money. The bank called the police, and when they arrived, my dad tried to resist and was beaten to a pulp. They were sentenced to 4 years in jail each. With their cancer, I doubt they will survive the 4 years. Serves them right. Few months later, I got a mail from them how I should visit them, but I never did. Instead, I got married, had a son, and will often send them pictures of my new houses, cars, and my family, but I never reply to their mails from prison. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.